members of the Association La Fede Scartata, an association of faithful recognized by the Diocese of Milan that promotes Christian foster care and adoption. I would like to give you the floor at this point. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. Let us begin the third panel with the title, Family Love in Moments of Tribulation. Put to the test. We still have linger in our minds the reflections and the proposals of the young couple that has urged us to always stand by their side. And we have to stand close to all our young people. Therefore, now we are absolutely certain of the need to accompany young couples in the first years of marriage along a good path of awareness regarding the personal and also spousal wishes and expectations we all have. We are also aware of the need for an accompaniment that over time will help spouses to strengthen their relationship and, wherever possible, to avoid dysfunctions or even permanent breakups. We shall begin the work of this panel. We will hear from, let's say, three couples who will speak to us as witnesses. They will talk about experiences of accompaniment in different moments in family life. These are three experiences that basically show us how important it is and how urgent it is to proclaim the gospel in the family in a missionary way that's related to the problems that people find along their path. As we shall see quite soon, we need families that are able to welcome without being judgmental and showing paths of goodness, basically without sparing no effort. Standing close by that does not impose rules, but that helps in recognizing the deepest needs of both individuals and families. And therefore, we will listen from the first couple, Karina and André from Brazil, Diocese of St. John of the King from the state of Minas Gerais. They have 7 children. For more than 20 years together, they have worked on the accompaniment of young couples to prepare for marriage and formation in family pastoral care. André published several books and articles, and he works with the Brazilian chapter of the John Paul II Institute on studies on the marriage and family. Marriage and the family, sorry. In their contribution entitled Family Love, Beautiful and Fragile, they will tell us about the beauty of love experienced within the family and the need to constantly take care of this love with dynamic resistance, as Pope Francis suggests in Amoris Laetitia at number 118, because love in itself can be very fragile. Karina.
Boa tarde, estimados irmãos. Saudamos os membros do dicastério para os leigos, a família e a vida.
Good afternoon.
Saudamos os demais cardeais.
Dear brothers and sisters, we would like to greet His Eminence Cardinal Farrell and all the members of the dicastery for laity, family, and life. We greet all the other cardinals, bishops, priests, families, and members coming from the most diverse movements that are gathered here. And also, we would like to say hi to our beloved children, João Bosco, 20 years old, our social media guru, Ana Maria, skilled and careful in everything she does, 18 years old, who has recently joined or entered into a religious life. José Afonso, at 16 years old, our athlete, who, so young, is already close to become a black belt in Taekwondo. Maria Paula, our flutist, who at 13 already plays in a bicentennial orchestra. And Maria Isabella, 10 years old, she's our little chef. She loves animals. And She dreams of having a large family one day, and Joana Francisca, that looks for perfection in movement in gymnastics, and she's called Francisca to pay tribute to our Pope, because she was born in the year of his election. And then João Diego, who at 7 makes us laugh all the time, always surprises us with his development in his studies, and he is doing great in his soccer school. Introducing to you our family, we do so in the same way as the psalmist does. Declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous works among all the peoples. And how can we not consider family love as one of these wonders? We like to compare this to a diamond with different facets of different sizes, but all very shiny and brilliant. We could look at different facets of this diamond, but we consider 4 that to us are the most important ones. The first facet that we would like to look at is to understand the place of family love in the history of salvation. The first commandment of the Holy Scripture was for man and woman to be one flesh, to grow and multiply. The journey of the people of God and its challenges were lived as a family. The coming of the Savior took place within a family. His first miracle happened during the establishment of a new family, at a wedding banquet. At the end of time, we will have the greatest and most awaited wedding. This and other passages from the Bible locate marriage in the heart of God. We have no doubt whatsoever that this is not a mere human arrangement, but rather it is a divine plan, the icon of God's love. For this reason alone, family love is already wonderful. If we now look at this diamond, right, we turn it around and we look at a second facet, which is the aim, the goal of this wonderful project and coming from God, well, it must be necessarily holiness. God did not unite us in marriage only to live well and enjoy our life better. No, He brought us together so that together we can reach Him. Married love does not lead only to basically meeting our spouse, but we encounter our spouse in order to encounter God. On the third facet of this diamond, we can then contemplate family love in its daily life. In the family, we experience the culmination of the love that Christ taught us. We strive to be solicitous, to be patient, to forgive, and to begin again without expecting anything in return. For even charitable works can make us proud and bring returns in terms of social status, popularity, or the vanity for being known for being saintly. But in the family, instead, love is true and unselfish, especially the love of parents for their children. This is how it works. However, it is on the fourth facet of the diamond that we see God's light shine even more brightly, because marriage is God's plan. It points to heaven and is a path to sanctification, to holiness. But this is not easy. Nothing is easy. Not even single life or religious life is easy. That's for sure. But what we can never lose sight of is that the author of love himself comes to help us live love and make love possible. In the Catechism, we have a beautiful paragraph on this, which should be engraved in the hearts of us all. Quote, and I quote, "Christ encounters Christian spouses through the sacrament of matrimony. Christ dwells with them, gives them the strength to take up their crosses and so follow Him, to rise again after they have fallen, to forgive one another, to bear one another's burdens, to be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ, and to love one another with supernatural, tender, and fruitful love." End of quote. It is something wonderful. But this is only possible because Christ comes to encounter the spouses. And this is not just mere symbolism, it is real. And this gives us a supernatural strength. We testify to the fact that even though we're young people with great participation in the parish and in various pastoral activities, we get married seeking God's blessings, but without knowing well what these wonderful facets of family love really are. When we get to know these dimensions of marriage, which only happened after many years of marriage, our perception changed completely. These four facets, origin, destination, sanctifying daily life, and the presence of the Lord, gave the sense that was missing to our journey, a journey that is still challenging and demanding, but has become also possible and very fulfilling. Everything began to make sense, working, teaching, caring, supporting, correcting, observing, guiding, asking for forgiveness and forgiving, keeping silent, praying, everything with a clear goal and with the presence of the Lord. Contemplating marriage is the first step to rescue so many relationships that are exhausted and fragile. By the way, like any other precious stone, jewel, there is a conflict between beauty and fragility, which seems to be a universal law imposed by God, so that we learn to take better care of what is more precious. It is the same with family love. And to take better care, it is necessary to understand the fragilities and support couples, especially at the beginning of married life, because we do not live in a fantasy world. We must take the family to heaven without taking our feet off the ground. Pope Francis has worded this beautifully. He said that family life is made with an inevitable mixture of enjoyment and struggles, tensions and repose, pain and relief, satisfactions and longings, annoyances and pleasures. Actually, in our time and age, the struggles, tensions, sufferings, and annoyances perhaps speak louder. This wonderful diamond, which is family love, is not that sparkling any longer. This might happen. To believe that it is a utopia to experience family love is a temptation that surrounds us all. Who amongst us has never heard a pessimistic comment or a joke about marriage, even in a parish meeting? And speaking of jokes, allow us to then give a suggestion to the Holy Father for a little tweak to the marriage consent, let's say. I receive you and promise to be faithful to you in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness, loving and respecting you all the days of my life, and even during a pandemic. I'm joking. We are joking, of course, but this actually speaks to a reality that can be seen in the growth in the number of divorces that happened during lockdowns. The pandemic has exposed a great fragility in our relationships, which is difficult for many to live together. And this also points to deficiencies in convictions that we have about family life. What was lacking? Dialogue, perhaps, forgiveness, patience, humbleness, an attitude of service. Many other weaknesses could be mentioned here in an almost endless list, such as turbulence in a relationship, lack of dialogue, consumerism, hedonism, pornography, adultery, the challenge of forgiveness, infertility, drug addiction, the rise of homosexuality within families, divorce, abandonment, and many other weaknesses. I believe that all of us here agree on the fact that the care of fragilities and the most diverse areas of life, and supported by the most disparate sciences, are necessary, must be deepened. Something that has been developing in the last decades, bringing answers and also better quality of life to many couples. An example is the positive results that psychology brings to us with its studies on personalities and the application of this knowledge to spousal life as well as to the education of children. However, we have to be very careful that we do not turn marriage into a technical kind of relationship. And as a family pastoral care, we do not live as a factory churning out courses that for the most part are poorly attended. We need to say, from our experience of more than 20 years accompanying couples, that sciences can become mere behavioral tools or instruments if they are employed outside of grace. Pope St. Paul VI pointed out that outside of an integral vision of man and his vocation, that is also supernatural and eternal, techniques are seen as partial. God is family. Therefore, the family must be in the image of God and not the result of structures and techniques. We believe that there are two great fragilities that should be the starting point. First of all, the fragility of all fragilities. A couple that begins its married life without looking at the four facets or sides of the diamond that we mentioned in the beginning. Without its supernatural aspect that's reduced to techniques for living together, marriage becomes fragile, very fragile. And if this is the case, it is in no way different from the unions of other religions or even pagan unions. To deal with the many possible weaknesses without placing them in the context of the vocation to holiness is, as we say in Brazil, it means trying to dry a block of ice. Or, as Jesus warned us, it is like building a house on sand. In these years of our pastoral life, something has become clear when we look at the couples around us. For those who live a journey of greater spirituality, turbulence is a time of trial in which people should look for help. They experience the power of grace that helps them face the challenges of marriage and the family. And they experience the love that, in spite of everything, never gives up. They intensify their prayer and look for techniques to favor dialogue, to improve child rearing, or turn to medicine, and many other sciences. The approach to the various support services of the family pastoral care becomes easier and more efficient. On the other hand, for those who live in a situation of superficial condition or in ignorance, without delving deep into grace and doctrine, these turbulences can become an insurmountable barrier, because without considering these four facets of the diamond of family love, well, these facets lose motivation, lose their reason, even to receive specialized help. After all, what is the point of putting so much effort in saving a marriage? Pastoral action becomes more and more distant for these couples. The second weakness that we need to comment on is the pace of family life. Family love is in danger when the family is overwhelmed by a hectic pace that does not allow for conviviality. The simple act of eating together around the same table and sharing the facts of the day has become a rare occurrence. To some extent, the understanding of happiness is the fruit of, let's say, goods that we own, career, and status, drives our everyday life at a speed that overwhelms the family. And this is what weakens family relations. Added to this, we have to consider feminism that has disfigured women, taking them out of the home to become one more cog in the productive and financial machinery, generating problems such as the feeling of abandonment that Pope Francis has emphasized in Amoris Laetitia. To couples, we recommend that, if possible, they need to reassess their family routines. Even though perhaps it is challenging to pay bills on time at the end of the month, but we should not have any regret if we organize family life within the hierarchy of values where work should be at the service of the family and not the other way around. As a father, breadwinner, and guide, I look for jobs that allow me to be more present in the family. As a mother, I'm aware that my superb mission is motherhood. No professional success covers the value of my total dedication to the garden that God has given to me, especially during our children's childhood and adolescence. And these are the most fruitful times for the development of their character, virtues, and religious foundation, just as Mary did when she stood by Jesus' side. It is also necessary to take care of the time for the relationship between the couple. Let's say a date, a walk, a movie. This is very good, and it is possible even in a family with 7 children. During our 23 years of marriage, we made sure that we would find opportunities to do these things, to always celebrate even the small successes of our everyday life. Love is also creative. We need to review family habits and projects. We need to be a family rather than just be people living under the same roof, always living in a hurry, running around all over the place as if I had to defuse a time bomb. For us, this is a great threat to the viability of family love. This is our simple contribution. We hope that this reflection can awaken in you the wonder for family love, as well as the attention to care for these fragilities that are at the very foundation of married life. Especially to married couples, we ask you, please do not get tired of repeating and testifying to the fact that family love is wonderful, it is possible, and it is a path to holiness. Blessed spouses, Luigi and Maria Beltrame Quattrocchi, pray for us.
We would like to thank Carina and Andre for their presentation. And now we have another couple that comes from South Africa, Stephen and Sandra Conway, from the Archdiocese of Durban. They have been married for 35 years. I have a daughter, Heather, and they are grandparents of 2 kids. They overcame a difficult time thanks to Retrovi Association, and this is their story. And since then, they have been helping other couples in difficulties. We introduce their report, Betrayal and Forgiveness, and quoting Pope Francis, number 232, Amoris Laetitia's, we have to help discover that an overcome crisis doesn't bring about a less intense relationship, but helps to improve, really improve the union. We don't live together to be less happy, but to learn how to be happy in a new way, starting from new stage in life and the new opportunities.
As you just heard, we'll be listening now to Stephen and Sandra Conway from South Africa.
We are Stephen and Sandra from Durban, South Africa. We represent Retrovi, a ministry for troubled marriages. The program consists of a 11 weekend followed by 12 follow-up sessions. Retrovi looks at the 4 stages of marriage: romance, disillusionment, misery, where our betrayal took place, and finally, joy. In the romance stage, the focus is on the other person, and any faults are ignored or overlooked. The romance stage does not last forever, and couples may soon find themselves being disillusioned with little annoyances that start creeping in. Disillusionment can lead to misery, where all the problems faced are blamed on another person, and life can become a living hell.
How couples can move from this misery to the joy stage includes making the heroic decisions to love, to trust again, and to forgive. We are now going to share our personal story with you based on the concepts of Retrovi.
The romance stage of our marriage began when I first met Sandra one morning at her home. I was friendly with her brother and was studying at university with him. One night, after a night out in the town, I ended back at his house and slept on the couch. Sandra brought me breakfast in the morning, and I was attracted to her straight away. I felt a surge of adrenaline flow through my body on meeting Sandra, and my heart skipped a few beats. Sandra was initially a very shy and soft person, but as she opened up to me and allowed me into her inner circle, I saw she had a lot of insight and was truly a beautiful person. When Sandra turned 21, we got engaged. This was also the day before I went to do military service for 2 years. I left and was really counting days when I'd be home to get married, to spend the rest of my life with the love of my life. I felt sad knowing that I'd be away for 2 years, but also hopeful as a new Sandra was waiting for me to return. Sadness was the strongest feeling. A physical image of my sad feeling was similar to having a heavy heart. On a scale of 1 to 10, my sad feeling was a 10. And an image of my sad feeling would be similar to relatives at the funeral of a loved one.
I remember the first time I met Stephen. He came home with me with my brother from a weekend down the south coast. I made breakfast for my family and felt anxious and excited, including Stephen in the meal. Soon after that, Stephen seemed to be visiting more often. My heart used to race in my chest with excitement, knowing that Stephen was coming to visit, and he certainly knew how to charm me. We soon could not be separated and would spend all our time together. I remember how my family used to say that Stephen could not keep his eyes off me. When Stephen had to go to military service, I thought I would never cope, not being able to see him and be with him as we had become inseparable. I used to wait anxiously for his calls and looked forward to his letters in the mail. On my 21st birthday, Stephen and I got engaged and were married 2 years later.
In the early years of our marriage, I began to get upset with Sandra over various issues, but did not communicate this to her most of the time. She was very close to her family and often thought she was more concerned about their needs than mine. This often left me feeling resentful and annoyed, and I became bitter towards Sandra and her family.
Despite Stephen being quite a social person, he was very quiet at home. I found myself thinking that I had to drag everything out of him to get any action. Out with his friends at the running club or football, he never stopped talking and drinking. His quietness at home began to irritate me.
We faced the second stage of marriage when I became disillusioned about the future and where I saw our marriage going. My perception that Sandra put her family first came to a head when her dad got sick with Parkinson's disease and he was forced to leave work. It was decided that Sandra's folks should move into our home. I was finding it more and more difficult to be at home. I felt insignificant and unimportant. Sexually, it was also frustrating. Our house is not a big one. It is impossible to get romantic for fear of someone walking in or making too much noise. In this period, I drifted and withdrew more and more.
I began to realize that I was not happy with myself. I was too shy and reserved and did not enjoy going to the running club or being amongst people I did not know. I thought I was no longer special in Stephen's eyes and was ignored. I started to feel more self-conscious, scared and jealous. Like a kitten frightened by the bigger cat, I wanted to run and hide away.
Sandra's mum and dad stayed with us for close to 7 years before he passed away. And by this stage, a married single lifestyle had very much set in. The married singles lifestyle is a slow and innocently begun, and in many cases, an unconscious change in behavior after marriage, rather than an outright decision to live an independent and self-centered existence. It can develop because of the attitudes that we sometimes bring into marriage. We start a gradual trend where we begin thinking more of our own interests rather than those of our spouse. begins not because we want to spite the other person, but simply because we think we might be happier pursuing our own goals. And we don't see any real harm to our marriage because of this attitude. Then, over the years, this change in attitude becomes prevalent, and it seems normal that we're no longer doing things together or spending time together. I had become very involved in the running club and become chairman, giving me a sense of acknowledgement. A relatively new lady in the running club joined Sandra's work and was looking to train with someone for an ultramarathon in South Africa, and we joined our running group. I started running more and more with this person, and over a period of time, our relationship moved to a different level, and we began having an affair. I'd thrown our marriage into the third stage of misery. Things came to a head when Sandra went on holiday with her mum to her brothers overseas. I was seen by some of Sandra's work colleagues with this woman, and Sandra and my daughter read some messages on my phone. A very emotional and upset Sandra called from overseas, and I confessed I'd been seeing this person. We planned to talk, and Sandra returned, and during those days of waiting for her to get back, I was filled with guilt and fear.
At the running club one evening, I sensed something was wrong. Stephen kept looking at another girl sitting with myself and her husband. I confronted Stephen that night about it, and he denied what I had seen. My heart was in my stomach, and I reacted with aggression and tears. I continued to feel uneasy, and eventually one night picked up his cell phone and opened a message he had just received from that very person I had considered to be a friend and colleague. I felt embarrassed and ashamed. I had sleepless nights, horrible days, and hours of being sick in the stomach. I cried out to my family, saying that no one knows the feeling of not being wanted anymore. It was as though my world was ending.
After Sandra returned from overseas, I moved out for a few days, and on returning home, I still didn't know what I wanted. Sandra and her daughter asked me to do the program before any decision was made. That's the retrofit program. I reluctantly said yes, leaving the final decisions for Sandra to do. During the retrofit weekend, I learned the techniques of dialogue and the need to ask for forgiveness. Dialogue is a way to communicate your feelings in a safe environment. It teaches us that feelings are neither right nor wrong. They're just reactions to a person, place, or event. One can, for example, feel angry, and that's okay. It's what the person does with that anger that makes it right or wrong. I wanted to be forgiven, but battled with the process of how to do this. I found it difficult to say the words. Also judged the only way I could ask for forgiveness was to show a sheer desire for forgiveness would be through my actions and deeds. I had to build up trust again. I was also battling to forgive myself. I hurt my wife of 21 years and her daughter too. I had done wrong, and I thought, how can I possibly forgive myself? I was going through internal torture, more than any pain I'd ever experienced, even worse than having root canal treatment with no anesthetic. I was full of remorse and guilt. I would often find myself crying while driving the car on my own, or sitting quietly in my office at work. I judged that I did not deserve to be forgiven. For healing to take place, I learned the process started by asking for forgiveness. I knew the healing process would not happen overnight, but soon after our weekend, during a dialogue session, I asked Sandra for forgiveness, and I started the process. Asking for forgiveness is not merely saying, I'm sorry. Saying I'm sorry still leaves you having the power, but asking for forgiveness means you become vulnerable. The power is transferred to the other person who can forgive, but who can also say no. However, for true healing to take place, one has to let go of the pain. It cannot be your focus of all your attention.
I had forgiven Stephen before, but this time it was hard to forgive. I knew I had to. I believe Stephen did not realize what it took for me to forgive. I began to think about my responsibility in our relationship reaching this point. It seemed to me Stephen never shared his feelings, and when he did, I ignored them by putting others and my work first. I believed it to be okay if I was busy doing work and church activities. Stephen had never asked for forgiveness, although he had said he was sorry. I was also reminded of Jesus, who gives us the good news of a loving and forgiving Father. Jesus, who loved the sinner and forgave the sin, who befriended prostitutes and tax collectors, who showed compassion for the weak and who healed the sick. There are so many examples of forgiveness in Scripture. The sinner who washed Jesus' feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. The rejoicing over the lost sheep returning to the fold. Dismas, the good thief, the woman taken in adultery, whom Jesus saved from being stoned to death. A saying that has really touched me and brought the importance of the victim giving forgiveness is by Louis Smead, who said, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free, only to realize that the prisoner is me." Forgiveness won't change the past, but will surely change the future.
As I experienced Sandra's forgiveness, our relationship continued to heal, and I've been able to forgive myself. We still have our moments, but through the techniques learned at Retrovi, we handle problems differently and resolve issues a lot easier. The healing process does not work overnight, but working on it day by day, changes do occur and things do get smoother.
At lunch one day, I told Stephen that he had never asked me for forgiveness. For the first time, he openly shared his feelings on the subject and said he just thought he had. The healing process took many months, and there are still times now when I have bad days. The difference is now I can talk to Stephen more openly about this, and he can help me deal with what is bothering me. When we realize what we are not doing things as we have been shown in Retrovi, we acknowledge that fact and try to make things right using the tools we have been given.
We had moved to the fourth stage of marriage, joy. In the joy stage, we no longer focus on ourselves as individuals, but now on us as a couple, unified in the true meaning of love. It is in this stage that we realize that love is not a feeling, but in fact is a decision. You can decide to love despite how you're feeling. A Retrovi priest often uses the following scenario to illustrate this point. When couples have a young baby, it's easy to love the child at 10 a.m. in the morning when the child has been fed and changed and is smiling away. But at 2 a.m. when you're tired and need to sleep for work the next day and your child is teething and crying the house down, it's not so easy to love him or her. But you make the decision to love and get out of your warm bed despite the tired and irritated feelings you may have. Also necessary to move on to the joy stage is a need to forgive and to ask for forgiveness for any hurt you may have inflicted on your spouse. We also need to make the decision to trust again, despite our feelings. If trust is given, then the other spouse needs to act trustworthy.
The statements that stood out for me after doing the Retrovi weekend and follow-up sessions were, feelings are neither right nor wrong, and you have to be responsible for your own feelings. Doing the follow-up sessions helped me feel secure in the knowledge that we were both continuing the journey and the healing process. We dialogued almost every day and grew closer, slowly but surely. It seemed to me that I had the old Stephen back.
I learned techniques and tools on the Retrovi weekend, which have been very helpful. Sally and I continue to learn, and we continue to learn and grow by following the follow-up sessions that follow the weekend. And for me, this is where the real work started. There are times when the going gets tough, but having a desire to make our marriage work, we try to work through these times and have a positive attitude that we can make it happen. In the follow-up sessions, we continue to share our journey. Using support of the Retrovi family and dialogue, the journey forward is made easier. We know that we are not alone in this continuous journey. Crisis and hurt in marriage can be dealt with, and although the 4 stages of marriage can be repeated again and again, each time couples will be more equipped to recognize where they are, and hopefully a deeper love and understanding will be reached in the joy stage of marriage. Thank you.
Grazie Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen and Sandra, for having shared your story with us. Let us move on now to 2 people who hail from Canada. Madame Danielle Bourgeois and Father Eric Kaji. They come from the Archdiocese of Montreal in the province of Quebec. Madame Danielle is the founder and the Director General of Famille Solitude Miriam, a spiritual family of consecrated lay people coming from an experience of separation, divorce, or widowhood, committed to welcome and support separated people, and they also dedicate their efforts to the formation of couples to marriage. Father Eric is the chaplain. To introduce their contribution, the title is Abandonment. We would like to use the words of Pope Francis in Amoris Laetitia, number 242. Forgiveness for an injustice that you have suffered is not easy, but it is a path that grace makes possible. Hence, the need for a pastoral care of reconciliation and mediation through specialized centers for listening to be established in the dioceses. And let us give the floor now to Madame Danielle and Father Eric.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. Marital and family love in difficulty is the theme that I've been asked to share with you today. Actually, I'm in a good position to talk to you about this because I was a married man myself, and the difficulties in our marriage led us to separate. Subsequently, my wife passed away. In 1994, I met divorced people who lived their solitude in fidelity to their spouse. What struck me was their joy, their love of God, their love of the Church, and their fraternal love. I joined this group after several years of journey with the Famille Solitude Miriam. I felt challenged to give my life in a more radical way. After discernment with our bishop, I enrolled in the major seminary of Montreal, and I'm now a diocesan priest at the service of the Famille Solitude Miriam as chaplain. I'm also a father and grandfather of 3 beautiful granddaughters. All this to tell you that I'm aware that in marriage there is love and joy, but there are also many difficulties that spouses need to go through. The sacrament of marriage is unbreakable because it is a covenant made between 2 spouses and Christ Christ never breaks his covenant. It is certain that all couples who get married ardently wish that their love will last until death. This is the dream that all couples basically have when they are at the foot of the altar. They are sure that their love will be strong enough to withstand moments of suffering and then enjoy the joyful moments. And it is with this conviction that they basically embark upon married life. However, it happens quite often that this dream becomes a real nightmare that too often ends with the departure, the abandonment of one or the other, and this is when the couple breaks up. But so is the family. The family becomes broken. Let us never forget that it is the children who are the most unhappy when their parents break up. When couples argue, children suffer, and they experience great insecurity. They fear that their parents will separate. They always hope that their parents will love each other When divorce happens, the children are the ones who are hurt the most. It is vital for children to see their parents united in love. And it is their right. It is a right that we should never take away from them. After a divorce, loneliness is hard to bear. And many people dare to hope that perhaps another spouse will bring their pain to an end, and that this time love will last forever. But unfortunately, it happens all too often that divorced people just go from one dream to another, from one love to another, from one disappointment to another, from one injury to another, and from one breakup to another. And the children move from family to family, and they are increasingly hurt and live in a situation of extreme insecurity. We are living more and more in a dark world, and we are called by God, even as divorced people, to become beacons that light up the night, to guide the many people who have gone astray and have lost the way of faith and the way of the church. In my humble opinion, there is a huge gap in the church today, and that is preparation for marriage. As priests, we have 7 or 8 years of formation and preparation. And for a couple to get married, we ask them to prepare for a weekend. At least this is what happens in some of our regions in Canada. And this is to prepare couples for a marriage that is supposed to last for a lifetime. They're often totally ignorant of what a sacrament is, and totally ignorant of what the indissolubility of their marriage is or means. It is important that engaged couples find places in the dioceses where they will find well-prepared people to help them discover the beauty, the greatness, and the depth of the sacrament of marriage, in order to help them become united and happy couples that will establish happy families and who will be able to go through the different stages of married and family life together. I believe that happy couples who have gone through some difficulties and have experienced them in faith and forgiveness could be good formators to prepare young couples for marriage. As the Holy Father Francis says in his book, The Joy of Love, it is also important that there be places in the dioceses where divorced people can be received and accompanied by people who are well trained in discernment and compassion. I will therefore let Madame Danielle Bourgeois, founder of the Famille Solitude Myriam organization, I will let her share with you her personal and community experience.
Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon.
La famille Solitude Myriam.
What exactly is the Famille Solitude Myriam? You might ask yourself and then ask myself, what is it? We all know that God has brought to life communities in every era that respond to the needs of the times. He has always seen the misery of his people. That's why in 1981, he chose a divorced mother, myself, to establish a spiritual family that could be appropriate to the needs of our time. With divorce on the rise, unfortunately, God wanted to comfort his wounded children. And let me tell you how he did it. Having been myself divorced for many years, I was 30 years old when I divorced my husband. One day I was asked to give my testimony in a parish. about my own life experience through my marriage and its difficulties, and also through my divorce, and also through a profound conversion that I have experienced. Following my testimony, young women, a number of young women call me to share their terrible suffering. Their husbands had left them to then live another love. There isn't really the worst heartbreak you can imagine, is that of having been betrayed and abandoned by those you love, and a tragedy. In 1981, and inspired by the Holy Spirit, I gathered these young women, or actually these women who called me up and who were crying. I gathered them in my house, and they were 12. They were broken, completely broken. They were discouraged. And I was wondering whether I could help them overcome the suffering. How can we heal hearts that are so bruised, so crushed by the rejection of the spouse they continue to love, despite everything? How could I heal the wounded hearts of these mothers who were so discouraged when looking at the suffering of their young children who kept begging for their father to come back? What could I do? And their suffering was overwhelming. But God had the power to heal these broken hearts. As our meetings progressed, we used to meet once a week, we started praying together. We shared the Word of God. And God, in His infinite goodness, sent to me a number of priests to help me. And through the Sacrament of Forgiveness, and in this case, that was very helpful in reducing their hard feelings, their anger. It is normal when you are deeply wounded that sometimes you want revenge, but God can heal a wounded heart. And the Eucharist gave them the strength to do so. And after just a few weeks, I saw them once again blossoming. And they went from sadness to joy, from a broken heart to joy, from discouragement to self-confidence, from hard feelings from resentment to forgiveness. Not only thinking about their husbands, but also these feelings applied to the new woman who had taken their place in the hearts of their husbands. Forgiveness also to themselves. They also forgave their own selves, as I was saying. Because in married life, you know this quite well, and there are always two sides to this story. As the weeks went by, this little group, which initially was made up by 12 people, kept getting bigger and bigger, and God kept gathering His wounded sheep to heal them. A small testimony I've picked among so many others. One day, a young woman said to me, Danielle, since my mother has been going to Solitude Mariam every week, it was a young girl actually, she doesn't cry anymore. She always sings now. And we, as children, there were 5 children, we sing and pray with her. Joy has returned to our home. Thank you.
Quand Dieu guérit le cœur d'une maman,
When
il guérit
God
aussi le cœur des enfants.
heals the hearts of a mother, he also heals the hearts of children. Another young girl said to me one day, Danielle, before my mother started going to Solitude Miriam, there were often men in our house,
Et ça nous
and that
insécurisait.
made us feel very insecure.
On avait peur que notre mère
And
parte
we
comme notre père.
only had our mother,
Mais depuis qu'elle va chez vous,
since our father actually was gone. But since she has been coming to see you, these men are gone, and we have our mother all to ourselves.
quand on
Thanks be
rejoint
to
les
God.
parents, Dieu rejoint
And
aussi les enfants.
so, as you can see, when the parents rejoice, the children rejoice, thanks to God.
Le 500 d'augmenter.
As the small group continued to grow, my house soon became too small.
Donc,
And in 1984,
une grande maison
a
nous
very
est
large house was given to us,
dans laquelle
in which a community life began.
Solitude Myriam, c'est une
This
communauté
is a very unique community.
Elle est formée d'hommes
It is made up of divorced men and women
n'ayant plus d'enfants.
no longer having children to support, because they're usually older individuals and their children live their own lives now. And they not only choose to live their divorce in fidelity to God, the church, and their spouse, but they also choose to dedicate their entire life to God for the unity and holiness of couples and families. I humbly believe that we have received a special charism from God to accompany and help people who are going through the tragedy of divorce, as well as many couples who are going through hard times. Many couples come to us seeking forgiveness and healing of their wounds for a new beginning.
Il nous arrive peut-être dans nos couples parfois
And
de croire que notre amour
sometimes
est mort.
couples say our love is
Mais la
dead,
plupart
has
du temps,
died.
il ne s'est qu'affaibli.
But actually, sometimes that love has just become weaker.
Alors il s'agit
And at that
de
point,
le réveiller.
we just need to reawaken this
Et on
love.
s'aperçoit avec l'accompagnement,
And with
avec
this
les sacrements,
accompaniment,
la
with
prière,
sacraments, with the sacraments, with
possible
prayer,
à un couple
it
en
is
difficulté de
possible
revenir
for
à leur premier
couples who are going through hard times to
C'est notre
find
joie à nous, les
the
personnes
love
divorcées,
of the earliest
de
days
voir
of
des
their
couples en
relationship.
difficulté échapper
And
au
it is
divorce.
so beautiful to see couples who were on the verge of divorce getting back together.
Un jour,
One day,
j'avais aidé un couple
I had helped
plusieurs fois parce qu'on leur donne beaucoup
a
de temps.
couple, and they came to me several times. I dedicated a lot of time to them, and one day a young man came to the community with a gift.
Ceci, c'est pour
It
vous
was a wheel of
remercier
cheese and said, "This is
d'avoir aidé nos
for you,
parents dans leurs
to thank you for helping our parents in their
Ils se
difficulties.
disputaient très
They
souvent.
used to fight all the
Et
time,
depuis que vous les
and
aidez,
ever since you helped them,
la paix est
peace
revenue dans
has
notre maison.
returned to our house.
Ils ne se disputent
They
plus.
do not argue anymore, and we, the children, are no longer afraid that they will separate. So thank you so much.
Et merci à Dieu qui
And
guérit les cœurs.
we have to thank God. He's the one who heals our hearts.
Vatican II
Vatican II tells us that marriage is a kind of consecration,
et vous les couples,
and couples, new couples, through the happy stages and the more difficult stages of your married and family life, can confirm, and you know,
votre mariage
that
est
your marriage
une réelle
is a real
consécration,
consecration,
une
a vocation of love and giving
qui vous entraîne
that
au
leads you
dépassement
to
et à la
overcoming
sainteté.
difficulties, and this leads you to
Le
holiness.
Christ, époux de l'Église,
Christ,
est votre
the
modèle.
bridegroom of the church, is your model,
Votre
your
source.
path,
Il est
your
le
source,
garant de votre amour
and the
et de
guarantor
votre
of your
fidélité.
love and your fidelity.
En solitude, Myriam,
In Solitude
les
Miriam, divorced individuals discover that divorce in no way diminishes their spousal and family vocation.
ils
They just live it in a different way, and they become, through their fidelity, which at times may seem heroic. So in this way they become important witnesses to the beauty and greatness of the sacrament of marriage. In our 3 houses in Canada, we organize days of renewal as well as retreats for single people, also days in which we support couples. We also help engage couples to prepare for marriage so that they can discover marriage as the most important vocation, because it is the foundation of society. Through evangelization that we have tried to achieve everywhere, the mission of the Solitude Miriam family and the spirituality of marriage has crossed the oceans and has given rise to small cells in other countries. In Switzerland, in the French islands, in Chile, in Argentina, in Germany, all the way down to the island of Réunion, where divorced men and women gather to live the same fidelity and spirituality as we do in marriage, although being divorced. I will gather you from all nations and make you walk according to my laws. I will be your God, and you will be my people, and I will wipe away every tear from your eyes. God says, and God fulfills his promise. Thank you.
That was Madame Danielle Bourgeois. Before her, we listened to Father Eric Keji.
We thank Danielle and all the speakers, especially for their pastoral work, for the Church, for God, for brothers and sisters, fully confident to be spokespeople for all those they have encountered along their journey. Thank you.
Grazie davvero.
Thank you very much to the moderators and to the speakers. So we have come to a break. We have 15 minutes, 15, for a coffee, and let's come back at 5:15 so that we can start sharp on time.
And we have a little break here, as you just heard, approximately a 15-minute